Hello and welcome to the Genuine Learning Blog. My name is Melisa Galasso, and today we're going to talk about a new ethics staff insights that came out of the AICPA around AI and ethics. As you probably are aware, there's a lot of usage of AI growing in the profession, rightfully so. However, the Professional Ethics Executive Committee, as well as the staff at the AICPA's Ethics Department, have obviously some concerns around some of the considerations. And so they put together a non-authoritative set of guidance for people to think about when using AI. And so this was issued in March. We've just been really busy with a lot of different coverage of topics. And so we're only getting around to it now, but it is something I talk about in a lot of my classes, and people always ask for the link. So I wanted to get it on the blog so that we could be able to have that link available very easily for people to take a look at and to keep you guys updated. So it is non-authoritative, but it's based on a lot of the questions that they're getting, a lot of the interactions that they're having. And so it is to serve as a resource, right? At the end of the day, it's going to highlight the risks around using AI. It's not discouraging anyone from using AI by any chance, but it is trying to talk about how do you leverage AI and how do you manage the risk with respect to it. So it's intended to enhance the understanding and application of the ethical principles from the Code of Professional Conduct when thinking about AI. And obviously the first one is around professional judgment. And so obviously the key here is that you cannot outsource your professional judgment to AI. And so when we talk about AI, we talk about something called human in the loop. And that is referring to the fact that you can't just rely on the outputs of AI. You have to make sure you're thinking about things like hallucinations and making sure that human involvement is still checking the accuracy of the work, understanding the data quality, and making sure that we're still using our expertise and our judgment. And so we want to make sure there's governance. We're making sure that we're looking at the outputs and we're not just assuming everything is great. And so when we think about this, there are a number of biases. For those who've been following my doctorate, that is the focus. I look at cognitive biases from an audit perspective, but obviously technology is a key consideration here. And so some of the biases that you need to remember, automation bias, where people tend to outsource and say, hey, anything comes out of there must be correct, right? And said, even when human reasoning says that doesn't make sense, they tend to over rely on the automation or the computer. Overconfidence, putting too much trust, believing that AI is, the cure to all problems. And then anchoring can skew information. I did a lot of work in my dissertation on looking at this particular bias and anchoring. And when you have that information, if you constantly look at everything with comparison to it. And so having that information that comes out of AI, is it skewing your ultimate outcomes? In addition to our kind of professional judgment, there's also the general standards rule that says you should only do things that you are competent. So you can't say, well, I don't know anything about this, but AI will help me. Right? That's not appropriate. You should only take on services that you can do based on your professional competence and not AI. And same thing with due professional care. When you're performing services, you have to exercise that due professional care. And so you can't outsource everything to AI and just hope for the best. So obviously, when we're thinking about gaining competence, obviously conducting additional research, consulting, getting training on the topic, making sure that you're compliant with the standard, particularly the audit standards. ASEC has been working on an AI-specific topic for a while now, and then understanding AI systems as part of this. So AI can actually enhance the work that we do from both an efficiency perspective, but also potentially a quality perspective. But we need to make sure that we understand how it works, what the how to use it appropriately. So there is a nice Q&A in 400.02 on using the output of technology. And so if you haven't taken a look at that, we've used it for things outside of AI before, but now specifically with this, a little bit of a reminder here. In addition, obviously, when we're handling confidential information, we have two considerations. The first one is from employment, which applies to those who are in public practice as well as members who are in business and industry. When you're getting this information that's related to your company or your firm, obviously, you're not allowed to disclose confidential information that you have as part of your employment. So obviously, you want to make sure that you understand the risk and when you're using AI of potentially sharing confidential information and make sure that when we're thinking about what we are putting into AI and how you're training your AI, making sure that we're not disclosing anything that is not supposed to be with respect to our employment. And then for those of you who work in public practice, you also have to think about client confidential information and not disclosing it. So before you enter things into AI, you need to think about, does this meet the definition of client confidential information? And if so, is this potentially going to be disclosed to others? And so is this a private? Is this internally built? What does have access? What is it learning? And making sure you're thinking about this. So the AICPA obviously wants us to proceed, but with caution. So they're not saying don't use AI. They're just saying when you're doing it, make sure you're thinking about the risks and you're taking appropriate actions and you're not outsourcing your professional judgment to artificial intelligence. So this has definitely been one that I think a lot of people have interest in. I've gotten a lot of questions in class, especially in my ethics classes. And so I'm glad that we have time now on the blog to address this. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I hope to see you on a future blog. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.